This episode is sponsored by HASA, delivering clean, healthy water solutions, the bottom feeder vacuum system, because it sucks to clean pools, and Skimmer, America's #1 pool software. Try Skimmer free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about winter pool care, specifically taking care of a pool in really cold weather. And I'll touch briefly here at the beginning on if you should close your pool or leave it open all season long, and some reasons why you should do either or. If you're looking to expand your pool service or get support out in the field, or if you just want one-on-one coaching, join my coaching program with over 270 members and growing. Learn more at poolguycoaching.com. So there's some debate, of course, on closing pools down. I think the easiest way to do this and to kind of figure out which zone you're in is to take the map of the United States and basically split it in half, almost down the middle. Probably you want to go a little bit lower than center. All the pools that fall below that line stay open all year round. All the pools that go above that line you would want to close during the season. So for instance, maybe from the top of California all the way across, and then I would say that anything above that would be a consideration to close the pool for the winter. Now, closing the pool involves a lot of steps, and usually you would want to hire a pool company familiar with closing the pool so that it's done in a correct manner. Why close the pool? It's not to save money per se on pool service, because closing and opening has its own inherent cost, and it could range anywhere from $800 to close the pool and maybe $800 to open the pool. So if you just do that math over the course of 6 months, you're not really saving any money on pool care, but you're closing it for a specific reason, because you're actually protecting the plumbing of the pool from freezing temperatures. Now, in my area, we rarely get freezing temperatures. I think maybe over the last 10 years, there's been a few times where the temperature has dipped into the low 30s, which would be considered freezing to some degree, but not any kind of threat to the pool plumbing. When you're talking about freezing temperatures, you're talking about when it gets close to 0 degrees. Then this is where, of course, the plumbing could crack and it could freeze. Actually, the plumbing doesn't crack with the cold temperatures. It cracks if water is in the pipes and they freeze. And then once the water thaws out, let's say that the cold snap ends, the water's thawing out in the pipes, it'll expand and it'll actually pop the pipes and break things, crack filters. If you don't remember, a few years ago in Texas, there was a deep freeze where a lot of things happened at one time to cause a major problem. First, it was really cold across regions or areas where it doesn't get as cold as that. Then the power went out, and so the pool pump stopped running in those areas, and which caused the water to freeze in the pipes, which caused everything to burst once things started thawing out. And this is very common. It caused a big shortage of jandy valves and check valves and pool filters. All kinds of pool parts were in high demand. It even caused a shortage of PVC plumbing because everyone was replumbing their pools. Now, this is unusual. We wouldn't get something like that in Southern California, nor would you probably get something like that in parts of Florida or most of Florida, but this could happen in parts of Texas that fall above that line or right at that line where I told you to kind of take the United States and divide it in half. Everything above that line, you close your pool. Everything below that line, you keep the pool open during the season, because you don't get really freezing temperatures, you don't get snowfall, you don't have that danger of the plumbing or the pool equipment being damaged. So if you look at your pool equipment, if you're in California, you'll see that your pool pump actually has these little plugs in them. Those are winterizing plugs, actually. We never use them here, but you can actually take those out and drain your pool pump. And then, of course, you have to clear the lines in the pool, drain all the water out of the lines, close off the plumbing, maybe even remove some components like the salt cell. What happened in Texas was that, this area where it had that deep freeze, no one removed their salt cell and no one had a dummy salt cell maybe in their garage. It's not something that you really have on hand. And the salt cells actually cracked as well when the water unfroze in there. And so certain components you have to winterize by removing them from the system, salt cells. Some people actually remove the filter internal parts entirely, the cartridges or grids, you may not need to do that, but there is a process, of course. And again, you'll need an expert to go over this process in some cases to winterize your pool properly and cover the pool for the winter, put the chemicals in the hold so the water holds and stays clean all winter long. So when you open it in the summertime, you're not paying for an opening plus a green pool cleanup. So closing the pool, there is some complexity. It's not something that's going to save you money per se. If you hire someone to open and close it, probably can do it yourself in some cases if you have the skill. But it's something that you do to protect the plumbing and equipment of the pool. And that's the main reason why you would close your pool and not keep it open during the winter time. For everyone that falls below that line and pool service providers that take care of pools in the winter, there are some factors to consider with winter pool care. One of them is that you actually recoup a lot of your summer costs in the wintertime, which means that if you have a customer that says, well, I'm not using my pool in October through March and I just don't want service, so I just want you to come in the summertime and I'm going to cancel in the winter, you need to explain to this customer that the reason why you can charge your rates in the summer is because you're doing their pool year round. And some of them may be like, well, we'll come every other week in the wintertime. Now, there are some precedents for not doing that. One of them, again, is that in the winters when you recoup a lot of your costs from the summer because you charge the same rate across the winter and summer months for that customer. Now, if they do want to go to every other week in the winter, you have to charge them more in the summer to make up for that loss because you have to pay your bills and you have to put food on the table. And it's something that the wintertime allows you to recover a lot of your extra chemical costs from the summertime, which is good because you're spending a lot more of your income on chemicals, on maintaining the pools. In the wintertime, again, is a time for you to recapture a lot of those costs because in the winter, you don't need to add a lot of chemicals to the pool. In fact, you have to add only a minimal amount of chlorine to the pools in the wintertime and really not too much muriatic acid at all because the cold water, the pH is pretty stable. That's one reason why you can winterize the pool and not worry about the pH in the pool. You want to balance the pool, of course, before you cover it and close the lines off, remove the equipment that you're going to remove. But you shouldn't worry too much about, the pool forming scale and having that kind of a problem. Now, one thing I guess I'll touch on this briefly is that a lot of times when you winterize your pool, the pool will have metals in it and it'll actually stain the pool when you open it up. Very typical for a fiberglass and vinyl pool that's closed. You'll have that brown staining when you open it up. Easily cured by ascorbic acid. Doing a treatment of that will take away all the brown staining from the metals that have kind of settled on the surface from the water not circulating, just sitting in the pool. But for your pools that you keep open, you're really not going to use, again, a lot of chemicals. You're not going to have problems with metal settling to the bottom and staining the pool. So this is the time for you to recover your costs. So explain to the customer very nicely that you do year-round pool service, and the reason why you charge, $180 or $200 per month is because you're also breaking that across the 12 months of the year, and you're going to recover some of your chemical costs in the wintertime. Most customers, not all, but most of them will understand this, and they'll understand your business model, and they'll be okay with it. Now, here in Southern California, we do have a lot of windstorms in the winter. We have rainstorms. We've had a lot of rain the last 2 years, to where it is something where you're going to be cleaning the pools and maintaining them in the winter time beyond just the chemistry. So there is something to be said with if the customer doesn't want you to be there in the wintertime, they're going to have a mess on their hands trying to take care of that pool. A lot of times they'll call you back. I've had customers say they don't want service in the winter. I'm fine with that. They want to cancel. I'm okay with that. And a month or two later, they call me back usually saying their pool's a mess. There's so many leaves in there. They can't maintain it. And sometimes I've actually gone back to these pools after a couple months, and the dirt from the staining from rainstorms and whatnot have permanently stained these pool plasters. So it's not something to take lightly. If you don't maintain your pool and vacuum it and have a cleaner, then get the dirt out of there. There's a lot of metal ions in the dirt, and if you leave it in your pool for 3 weeks or a month, and then you call me back to vacuum out your pool or clean it up, don't be surprised if that's actually stained into the plaster now at this point because of all the metals that's in the dirt. So there is something to be said with maintaining your pool the same way you're maintaining it in the summer as you are in the winter time. There's no real difference. There's more leaf debris, sometimes more dirt in the pool in the winter time, but there certainly is not the thing that happens where you just stop service in the winter and your pool looks great. Even though the water's cold, there is still some maintenance that goes on with the equipment, with the pump basket, with the skimmer. So it's not something that you can just forget about in these areas where you keep them open in the winter. There is a lot of different problems that can happen to a pool in the wintertime, and that's why service is always good to have weekly service year round to prevent any kind of problems with the pool itself. Let me give you a few tips if you do pool service in the winter, because it is cold out there. Now, Southern California, we're kind of wimpy. You may laugh at us if you're in an area like parts of Texas where it gets really cold. But to us, getting out there when it's 40 degrees, 45 degrees in the morning is pretty cold. And again, we've had mornings where it's been 37, 36 degrees. Nothing really to laugh at, but there are areas that are probably cooler in the wintertime than our area. So there are a few things you can do to help yourself with the cold affecting your hands and affecting your overall body. Of course, the first thing is to wear a jacket. This is kind of, a no-brainer, but you also want to maybe wear a skull cap or beanie because most of your heat actually escapes from your head. I think there's some scientific data that says 90% of the heat escapes from the top of your head or your head. So you want to cover your ears and cover your head, and that will keep you really warm. And you may want to get logos made for your skull cap or beanie that have your pool company on there, because maybe customers won't recognize you with the jacket on and wearing the beanie on your head. So you want to make sure you're identifiable. The other thing you can do is start a little bit later in the morning, because normally if you start, let's say at 6:30 or 7, those are the coldest hours. And if you could push it back to 8 or 8:30, which may be possible because you're not doing as much work in the winter as you are in the summer. You're not really balancing the pool as much. You're not going back and forth to your truck to get things. So you may be able to start an hour later when the sun's up. It's a little bit warmer. And that's one way you can avoid that. The other thing you can do is to get some cold weather gloves. Now, the ones I like, and everyone has their opinion on the best cold weather gloves. I like these because I've been using them and I'm comfortable with using these. But these are the Atlas gloves, the WG772. These are 26-inch long gloves that go all the way up to your elbows, and they're great for emptying out skimmer baskets, skimming pools in the morning. If you get the large size, I wear medium, but I get the large size so that I can put regular cotton gloves underneath. It keeps your hands really warm. And you can do a lot of things with these gloves. One thing you probably can't do is open like a combo lock. You have maybe a hard time tying your shoes, but they're really great because they keep your hands dry and relatively warm, especially if you're wearing a pair of cotton gloves underneath it. By themselves, the warmth kind of fades away after a few minutes, but you're allowed to actually stick your hand into the skimmer and get out the basket and empty it. And you can skim the pool pretty comfortably, vacuum the pool pretty comfortably with these gloves on. Again, if you have a pair of cotton gloves underneath, is even better. And then what I like to do is take the gloves off in between stops and put them on top of my dashboard to heat them up so that they're nice and warm and toasty for the next stop that I go to. And of course, you should have a working heater in your vehicle. My Nissan, before I switched to the Ridgeline, had a problem with my heater. It was a problem with the engine itself, and that's why the heater wasn't working too well. And so for one winter, it was totally freezing in my truck because the heater would kind of come on when it wanted to and wouldn't come on sometimes when it didn't want to. So it was pretty miserable getting into my truck with no heater, and I couldn't heat up my gloves like I normally do, but I don't have that problem any longer. But basically, you would want to utilize your vehicle's heater to kind of warm yourself up and warm the gloves up. These gloves are great, and you may also want to switch to a carbon fiber pole, because the fact that the carbon fiber is a little bit warmer to the touch than the aluminum pole after being in the water. It's not quite as frigid as the aluminum pole, which can be like almost like an icicle that you're holding in your hand, I should say. So it is pretty cold. And if you're not wearing those gloves in the morning, and if you're not keeping yourself warm, grabbing that pool pole is really cold, especially when the water has touched it from maybe brushing the pool or skimming the pool. So those are some things you can do that are kind of practical to stay warm out there. I really think those gloves go a long way. Again, they're the Atlas gloves WG772. You might want to get a pair of large ones so that you can wear gloves underneath. So I would go one size larger than you are, and that way you can keep your hands nice and warm. The gloves do, however, wear out over time, so you may want to carry a spare pair. Sometimes you'll actually get pinholes in the fingers. Then they're going to fill with a little bit of the cold water, and then they're going to be totally useless at that point. So have an extra pair. They're not super expensive. They're like $12 or $14 for a pair. highly effective and something to really consider. Now, I don't wear them all day long. By the time around 9 or 10 o'clock when things start to warm up, I take them off because they are kind of awkward to work with. And, there's only been a few days where I've kept them on like past noon, but typically I'll just take them off and won't use them. Now, there are some days I put them back on later in the afternoon when I'm doing some work and I need to wear them. So they are really handy to have, and I highly recommend having cold weather gloves of some type to keep your hands warm out there. I also wear long pants all year round, so in the summer and winter. So to me, it's no different. I'll just wear my long pants in the summertime as well as the winter time. And I think that's a key. You wouldn't want to be wearing shorts out there in the winter. You just want to stay as warm as possible. And you're really hopefully not spending as much time at each pool as you are in the summertime. So the cold won't affect you as much as the heat in the summer. I think I prefer it cold than hot anyway, and so I like the cold months versus the warm months. One thing to note that in the wintertime and those cold months, you may get some rain, and I'll touch briefly on what to do with rain events. Now, there are different policies all across the board of how much rain is, acceptable to go out there and service a pool, how much rain isn't. To me, if it's raining to the point where you can't even see the bottom of the pool, then that's too much rain to go out and service the pool. It's also very dangerous to be out there in the rain. It's colder, you're getting wet, and you could get an illness from being soaked. So you would want to have some kind of protective rain gear. I like the frog togs. They're really great. They're lightweight suits. They're really warm actually, and they're really comfortable. So the frog togs, I have my pants set and my top, and then I have my waterproof boots that I wear all the time. So I'm usually fine at that point. But you want to also pull the plug if it gets too wet out there. And people shouldn't expect you to go out there if you're getting 1 or 2 inches of rain. To me, there's nothing you can do anyway. You can't really do the chemistry. You can't clean the pool because you can't see the bottom. You can't even skim the pool really because it's just too dangerous and slippery around the pool. And all you can basically do is empty out the pump and skimmer basket, which to me is kind of useless at that point. So if you're getting rain to a point where it's just not drizzling, but it's pouring out there, and you'll know the difference if you do this long enough, I would pull the plug. And then the question arises, well, let's say that 2 hours later it stops raining. Do you go back out and service pools? I generally don't do that. I'm not going to go home, wait around, and then go back out again and finish the route. I'll just skip the rest of the pools that day. To me, it's a rainy day, no matter if it was 3 hours or 2 hours or 5 hours of rain. It's just one of those things where you just don't really go back out after because everything is wet. It's something, and more rain may come still. It's just a waste of time. So for me, my policy is if I get enough rain where I can't see the bottom of the pool and I can't really do anything, I pull the plug that day. And if it stops raining 2 or 3 hours later, I don't go out there, even if there's 2 hours of daylight, and finish the route. That's just my rainy day policy. And you have to implement something that's going to work for you. I think effectively you would want to have a service agreement that explains these things. And I have a one-page Word format one available that has a basic outline and a pretty good agreement. And you can add to it and subtract to it if you want. If you want a copy of the service agreement that I have, just email me at david@swimmingpoollearning.com and I'll get you the service agreement. Again, that's david@swimmingpoollearning.com. And I'll email you over this one-page service agreement that you can have all your new customers sign and maybe some of your old customers if they're willing. But have clear policies on rainy days and days where you can't go out to work in the wintertime. Again, the cold weather is pretty troublesome, of course, because it's cold out there. And sometimes you have to be careful also walking on grass that may form ice. I've slipped before. It's not fun slipping on grass that's got ice on it. Sometimes you have ice on the cement around the pools when it's really cold, so be careful you don't slip and fall into the pool. I haven't done that in the wintertime, thankfully, but I do know a member of my group who fell into a pool when it was 40 degrees out, and it took a long time to recover from that for sure out there on the route. And I always have a pair of extra dry socks in my truck, because even with the waterproof boots that I use, sometimes if it's raining or if you're walking out there and you step in a puddle, which does happen, you have to change your socks. That way you can get through the day with kind of warm feet still. But definitely you would want, again, to have the right gear. And I recommend waterproof boots as well as the rain gear. And I wear waterproof boots all year round anyway, so it doesn't really matter in the winter or summer. Let me give you the boots that I prefer. I used to wear Wolverine boots, and they started getting a little expensive. I used to get them at Sears. Of course, Sears is a business. And the Wolverine waterproof boots, I can't remember the model number of those, but they were really good. I've also used the Everboot on Amazon. It's a boot they sell there. It's called Everboot, and it's a waterproof boot. but currently I'm using the Columbia's men's boot. I think these are really comfortable. These are probably the most comfortable boots, plus they're waterproof to a point. Of course, you can't just like be walking in puddles of water with any of these boots, but they are waterproof. And I think that the Columbia men's boot right now, the one I'm currently using, I've probably gone through 4 pairs now over the last 2 years. They're really comfortable, so that's kind of an added bonus to the waterproofing. But you can use any of those 3 boots. If you find a good waterproof boot that you like, just use that one and stick with it, because it really keeps your feet dry all year round. But they really come in handy in the winter, walking across wet grass, walking across wet decks. It's a great way to keep your feet warm and dry, which is a key, I think, to staying comfortable out there. So make sure you have the right gear, of course. Wear those cold weather gloves. Start a little bit later. Have a good working heater in your truck, because I know what it's like not having a heater in the winter. And just kind of time things and plan things so that you're not freezing out there. And it will get warmer, so layer yourselves. You can take jackets off and sweaters off, and don't kind of be committed to like wearing something, because here in California it could be 40 degrees in the morning but 75 degrees by 12 o'clock. So there are some differences per region, and I think cold weather pool service is definitely doable, and I enjoy the cold more than the heat personally. If you're looking for other podcasts I've recorded, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, click on the podcast icon, and then there'll be a drop-down menu of over 1,500 podcasts for you to listen to at your leisure. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. Real quick, if you're not using pool service software, try Skimmer free for 30 days at getskimmer.com/poolguy. Again, that's getskimmer.com/poolguy. Skimmer, everything you need to run your pool service business all in one app. Become a Leslie's Pro member, and with almost 1,000 locations conveniently located less than 3 miles from your service route, you can quickly get in and out and take care of your customers. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software platform. Listeners of the podcast can try Skimmer for free. Visit my website, swimmingpoollearning.com, and click on the Leslie's Pro and the Skimmer banners to learn more.